Welcome, everyone. Thank you for tuning into today's event and celebrating Farm to School Month with us here at Freight Farms. We have individuals joining from all over the world interested in jumpstarting their own food to school programs, leveraging a host of different methods out there. A few reminders before we get started today. Today's event will be recorded and sent out to everyone. If you have questions throughout the session, there's a Q&A feature at the bottom of the Zoom. Please submit those questions throughout and we'll be responding throughout the event. We will have a Q&A session at the end. We have a jam-packed session, very exciting schedule. We'll be hearing from David Larson at Mountain Vista High School and Maya Atlas at St. Joseph's College in Maine, as well as David Harris from our client services team and our CEO, Rick Van Zura. So let's go ahead and get things kicked off. Rick, if you wouldn't mind kicking us off.
Thanks, Alex. It's great to be with you all. And I want to thank Maya and David, along with our team, for being here to share their experience and some of what makes for a successful education journey. And obviously, thanks to all of you for joining. So a little bit about my own journey. I spent time in a number of different industries as an executive in companies ranging from over 100 billion to startup. So a lot of interesting stops along the way, but I'm now at the point in my life where doing something that really has a sense of mission was and is very important to me. So when the co-founders, John Friedman and Brad McNamara, approached me last September about joining and helped me get up to speed on Freight Farms, the more I learned, the more I just loved the mission and the direction of the company and the real push to innovate and drive in a lot of ways that the world frankly needs. So I've been here since March. Had a great time as the team's really been running to continue to evolve our technology of container farms and modular farms to be very productive, and also, as I'll address later in the presentation, address some real fundamental issues that the world is facing right now. So particularly excited for this event because we are by far the leader in education. We're in dozens of colleges, universities, K through 12, around the country and around the world, including really leading institutions, research institutions, and play a role in education in a variety of ways, and even work on research for as far-flung places as NASA, figuring out how to grow on Mars. So we know that we can be a great partner in education, but obviously during these times of COVID, education's faced its challenges. Despite that, a lot of educational institutions have continued to exercise creativity to push forward and realize that, a lot of times in a time like this, now's the best time to really showcase what makes you different and how you can really, bring innovation to the world, and also support missions like sustainability and dealing with food security. So without further ado, I'll turn it back to Alex so he can let the real experts in this take it away from there. So back to you, Alex.
Thank you so much, Rick. So I'd like to introduce our first guest speaker. His name's David Larson from Mountain Vista High School. Mountain Vista operates a 2017 leafy green machine they actually received as part of a grant that David spearheaded in collaboration with a local foundation. The grant actually funded 3 farms. So there's one at David's school, there's one at another nearby school, and then a third at a nonprofit in downtown Denver, Metro Caring. And they use their farm for teaching purposes, but the produce in the farm is actually sold to parents and faculty through a CSA. So David, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Alex.
Thank you for joining us. So understand that you use the farm as a platform for teaching a class about business. Could you give us a quick overview of kind of how that works?
Sure, absolutely. So you can hear one of the dosing wheels spinning behind me there. I'm in the farm. It's a great incubator for all types of learning that might happen in a school. For us, what we landed on is we have a lot of kids who take a business pathway here, and we were looking for another entry point for them. That was one of the impetuses for getting this going. Another one was in a kind of an area of passion for me is to create courses and places for kids to really develop explicit skills, hands-on skills that are transferable to a variety of different industries. So the farm really lends itself very well to that as well. But basically, my kids will get a lot of the vocabulary and content of an intro to business class all applied to running an actual business, because that's how we're positioning our farm out of the 3 farms in the program that I'm helping out with.
That's fantastic. So you operate the farm as the platform for this business class. I understand that it changes, right? No semester is the same. Could you speak a little bit about kind of how that works? How do you develop that initial curriculum, and then how do you evolve that over time?
Absolutely. I think it's again, another good representation of how life works for us. We're going to hit on COVID changes a little bit later. All of us are up against that in the entire world. What I find is the consistent parts are I want the kids to have a literacy in those basic intro to business principles. So we scan and skim the top of all the things that you might talk about in business. But then what happens in real life, is we know, is circumstances dictate what we work on next. So there are things that happen in a given semester, be it right now the schedule, which I'll hit on later. You know, our kids are only here 2 days a week for a shorter period of time, and we alternate, keeping kids healthy and the community safe. So that's a challenge. So we've had to adjust to that. We lost our delivery aspect to our staff. So we're a huge comprehensive high school and middle school right next to each other, about 3,600 kids between the 2 schools. So that's kind of one of our main bases. So we have to adjust to that this semester. And that's actually a current event right now that we're figuring out. Other times we operate it year round. So other times we've had the challenges of pathogens walking in the door, because philosophically we are not limiting this like you might see many other operations limiting access. We have had upwards of 250 kids come through in a given day for tours, right? And then I have 10 to 20 kids working in it in a given day. So, you know, it's open, and philosophically we want that. We want people to see what's going on. So then we have to adapt to that. So it's just like life. We're figuring it out as we go. That's kind of how I guess it changes each semester. We are going from about 75 degrees, I think, or so a couple days ago, to Monday morning when we come, it'll be around 11. So today we were blowing out the outside irrigation and making sure nothing was going to freeze outside, because we run a fairly large native plant area and learning space based on the proceeds from the farm. So again, another thing we do with it. So we had to make sure that's ready to go for Monday.
Fantastic. It's great. I think it's great to have, you know, essentially what I'm hearing is the kids actually run the farm as a business, which I think is great. I know when we spoke before this, you mentioned it's a revenue source for the school. You just mentioned that it drives proceeds. Could you speak a little bit to how that works, how your CSA program works, and what you've been able to do with some of those proceeds?
Absolutely. So as Alex mentioned, there's 3 farms in this program. I was just texting with the one at Metro Caring, which is our food bank in downtown Denver. They're operating on a career skills, job skills kind of idea, getting folks who have in a food starved area who are also economically challenged, get them up and going. The one at my son's old high school, they're a traditional farm agriculture program. So they're running it as if they're going to go into agriculture, right? Well, our kids, we're running it as a business. We're running ours as a for-profit. And what we have been able to do after expenses are met each month, we obviously have additional revenue. So we are using that to support programs in the school. We have developed, well, we didn't want our folks walking across mud to the farm. So we made a parking lot just out here behind me. Ends up about 20 spots, a gravel parking lot that was funded through it. And as our school has grown, you know, teachers are using it now too. So we have a nice access point there. Funded a native garden. We have about a 400 square foot native garden, kind of a demonstration garden for the school and learning space area, about roughly probably 20,000 square feet of work that we've developed, proceeds from the farm. I started a new class this semester actually, called Home and Apartment Repair. And so about 2/3 of the funding that I needed so thus far has come from proceeds from the farm. So again, that fed that. And then we have also sponsored we're quite service-minded as a school. Philosophically, we believe, reaching out and helping others who either need something or are challenged more than we are is a good thing. So we sponsor those events as they come through. We'll make donations to those. So variety of different things, but I philosophically believe that if you can make a program 100% self-supporting without fees, I don't have any fees for my agriculture program, that's a win. And so we are not only covering that and all the experiences the kids have and keeping the farm going, but sponsoring other things. So that it really fits well with kind of how I try to design programs when I've been in that role before.
Yeah, no, and I applaud you. I mean, it's phenomenal what you've been able to do, not only delivering education, but finding, a way to, I know many schools I've spoken with, anytime you can talk about new revenue generation tends to be a hot topic. So, that's fantastic. You mentioned a few times, things are a little bit different now. I think anyone on the call knows we have, we're in a pandemic. Could you speak a little bit to how the COVID impacted your operation and kind of how you've adjusted?
Sure. And I guess I'd like to hit, this is a repeat, but it really is significant that we're entering into a time that none of us signed up for. None of us go, oh yeah, in 2020, I want to be part of a pandemic. That's going to be awesome, right? Well, no, of course not, right? So, but it is the reality we're up against. And so again, this semester, it shaped a lot of our conversations. How are we going to keep, this as safe as possible? And actually, we just adapted one minor setting from what we've done before. And when kids are working in here, we have the intake and exhaust running so that the flow in an LGM, the flow goes from the front all the way to the back constantly. So literally it's the cleanest place in the whole school, not just because of food safety, but because that airflow is constantly going to the back. That's an adjustment. I mentioned we lost revenue from our delivery. We were delivering anywhere from 10 to 20 bags to staff in the school. We just got okayed actually yesterday to explore returning that in some form. We have to adapt to the requirements of the school, but we're looking forward to getting that revenue back. So we have to figure out how to sell out each week is obviously the goal. And so when things go slow, you go, well, how come it's slowed down? Why is this? Those are always questions that I throw back to the kids along with, and I kind of do this, I sort of visually kind of think about all the things you might do with a farm. Well, we have emphasized, the business thing. We're really exploring that. Well, there's the science, which you'll hear a little bit more from Maya later, food security, sustainability, engineering, automation, all those things. And we've gone down each one of them a little bit, but that's the beauty, I think, of an environment like this is you match it to your interests, needs of your school and the kids that are sitting in front of you at any given moment. And that's what guides what you do. So I try to keep, as much as possible, we're trying to keep it normal. I will, honestly, it's been tough with the reduced amount of kid time in the farm. I've had to pick up some slack. That's okay. I love doing it, but we're all adjusting. And I think we'll come out of this having not signed up for pandemic, but we'll come out of it with some greater resilience and adaptability. If we keep a good faith and humor at times is the best thing. Just kind of keep it going. So just adjustments. I want kids to see that adults, even a 53-year-old farmer, should make sure that he's adapting to the current situation. So
that's fantastic. Before we move on, just wanted to ask one of the questions that we've received. How did you decide to start this at your school?
Yeah, that was I'll try to shorten a longer story. We have had, I've been in a role at the school. I was the coach, instructional coach, new teacher, inductee person, so mentoring new teachers. I've been a principal previously. I decided at a point in my career to start heading more back towards the classroom. I wanted to enjoy some more time directly with the kids. So I've moved into that role. And we have had a foundation that's been very supportive of our school. One in particular was visiting one day. We started talking about gardens. I found out my principal was interested in starting up an outside garden. Well, it wasn't quite to the scale of what's happening now, but it grew from that idea into a grant for 3 of these that came together. And I would emphasize again, it's always relationship, right? It's always not just who you know, but how you relate to people around you. A lot of the relationships and partners that we have, there's been no financial exchange between us. It's been expertise that gets exchanged. And I think that's really, really important for kids to understand as they develop their understanding of what they're going to do. So for us, we knew we wanted to support a growing program or business program. We knew we wanted self-supporting. We knew we wanted something adaptable. And so all those things kind of came together. And here I am, a farmer, and I was not born a farmer, right? So it's like many other stories I'm sure people are listening to. If you're an educator or you directly paid to be an educator, we're all educators. We're all figuring out things as we go along. That's how it's just morphs like that. And we have to be ready to adapt when opportunity strikes, I think.
That's
so good question though.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal story. And that was from someone from the audience. Fantastic. Well, I'm gonna move on now, but I know in the end of the Q&A, we'll bring everyone back. So thank you, David.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. So, as Rick mentioned earlier, there are over 40 schools out there in the US that have a freight farm today. And the team that supports them is our client services team, led by David Harris. A lot of the audience could see the task of potentially setting up a program like David mentioned as daunting. It seems it could be a lot just getting that going. David, thank you for joining us. Could you speak a little bit to how you've seen, you've been here for those 40 schools that have onboarded and the story after they receive the farm? Could you speak to how the client services team has partnered with those schools to kind of help address that initial daunting fear, and really how you've helped set them up for success?
Sure. So the client services team here at Freight Farms, we are kind of a one-stop shop when it comes to support in any realm. So whether that means, training on how to actually operate the farm, how to optimize once you're actually having it running, you want to get more out of it. You want to, get the most bang for your buck. We're here to provide that support. We've worked with a number of different schools and institutions to do just that, but we've also worked with them on the educational side of things as well. So we'll provide them with resources and content to develop their own programming as well. So there are a number of stories around that, but really we see ourselves as a partner, not Freight Farms as a company, but then also the client services team, and work directly with customers around the world really to help them meet their goals.
Fantastic. I'm a big story person. Could you speak to maybe some of those examples, some of those stories at different schools?
Sure. So there are a lot of different goals depending on, what your strategic goals are for your institution or your school. But a couple that come to mind are a school in Arkansas, the University of Arkansas specifically. Their entire program is pretty much overseen by their head nutritionist. So they took a kind of a different angle to it. They wanted to provide the most healthy, freshest, most local food that they possibly could to their student body. The farm is located very close to their main dining hall, probably about 100 feet away. And their specific goal was, how do we make the healthiest produce possible and make sure that it gets to our students? So from that end, it's very straightforward, but just a really great story. And we worked with them to help them make sure that they were getting the highest quality, freshest produce they could out of that farm. So there's that piece. Another one that comes to mind is Trinity High School District in Pennsylvania. The entire school district there has been really supportive of the Freight Farm and the mission. There's a really cool story about a student there who basically applied for a scholarship, and in order to make herself the top candidate for that scholarship, she basically used her experience in the Freight Farms and in the Freight Farm and the skills that she learned there to justify her earning that scholarship, and she ended up getting it, which was really cool. So the skills that she learned, as well as, David touched on some of these, whether that be from the business side, from the botany side, generally just from the responsibility side of things as well, were instrumental in her getting that scholarship.
That's fantastic. And I know personally offhand, earlier this month, we had an event with Jack Levine from Town to Table, who learned about farming in college, a little different from your story. but then actually parlayed that into his current job. He started a company operating the farms. So a lot of overlap there, and a lot of benefits for kind of the next generation of farmers. So one aspect that I've always found interesting about client services, and for those of you in the audience, if you're not aware, Freight Farms is a hardware company. We build these farms. We're also a software company, and there's a software farmhand that is used to interact with the farm when you're not in it. It's IoT enabled, so that anytime, 24/7, anywhere in the world, you can access your farm and see how it's going. And I know on the client services team, that's a key function because it allows you to be on site when you're not on site. Wondering if you could just speak at a high level to kind of how that interaction goes, and how having that portal into a farm really helps the client services team, solve any problems that a customer might have.
Sure. So Farmhand, as Alex just mentioned, is enormously helpful on so many levels. It is a software that we use to monitor, control, and program the farm. So from the control and program side of things, there is constant sensor data that we're collecting. You're actually able to check and make sure that everything is in the state that it should be in. So are your pumps on, are your lights on, et cetera. There's also the monitoring piece, which is really great for teachers and educators who want to monitor what's happening in their farm. Sort of a nanny cam feature, gives you that extra level of confidence. But it allows you to basically make sure your farm is operating the way that it should from anywhere in the world, as long as you have an internet connection. We on the client services end are using that to recognize trends in your data that can tell us where things can be optimized. So for example, the temperature is a little bit high in your farm. We can actually recognize that through the data. We can then help you set that temperature set point lower, which is more compatible with whatever you might be growing, and potentially increase your yield, for example. That's a very basic example, but we can dive really deep and provide really quality, robust support that way.
Fantastic. Well, I could ask you questions for hours. I think we're going to save those for the Q&A session at the end. But thank you, David, for speaking to how the client services team really serves as that partner to any institution out there interested in getting a freight farm. So with that, I'll pivot to our second speaker. Our next guest speaker is Maya Atlas from St. Joseph's College in Maine. St. Joseph's actually operates a 2016 leafy green machine. They received it as a donation from Hannaford Supermarkets. Maya is the director for the Institute for Local Food Systems Innovation there. And among other things, the Institute incorporates Freight Farm into their programming. And the food is used on campus in dining halls, as well as a few different options in the summertime when there's less students on campus. Maya, I'm going to start you out with a simple one. What is the Institute for Local Food Systems Innovation?
That is a great question, Alex, and actually not that simple. So thank you for asking. So a little background, St. Joseph's College is a Catholic liberal arts college in somewhat rural Maine. We're about a half hour from Portland. With that as the kind of need for colleges and the place that colleges hold in 18 to 22-year-olds' lives, we're trying to find more ways to provide practical learning options. So there was a kind of like New England initiative that made a decision to establish 50% local food by 2060. So the college kind of latched onto this idea and identified 3 major areas where we thought our students could learn practical skills that would keep them in New England, kind of contributing to our growing economies. So those were aging, food systems, and hospitality. So the program director role that I hold kind of skirts both food systems and hospitality. And as we go through this, you'll hear a little bit of both of those worlds. So the Institute for Local Food Systems Innovation, which I'll refer to as ILFSI, is kind of our foot in the door to finding different ways to integrate kind of sustainability, green consciousness to our campus, whether that's bringing local food to campus or growing our own food. So that's really kind of where my focus falls.
Fantastic. So in terms of how you actually use the farm, could you speak a little bit to programming, who's in the farm, what that looks like on a day-to-day?
Yeah, absolutely. So we kind of function under 2 major seasons, student season and summer season. Unlike other farms, that it's actually much to our favor that our students are on campus during Maine's kind of dry season. So we don't have a long growing season. And when our students are on campus, we're actually able to grow fresh produce that we can't get from local farms. So during the school year, we are typically about 100% student run. We do have a farm manager, Hillary Lampkin, who is amazing and has been with us since day one with the farm. Due to COVID, she's had to shift her focus a little bit more, so we've actually brought an additional manager in, but typically it takes us about 22 student hours to do everything in the farm. 100% of our yield, which averages, between 40 to 50 pounds a week, goes to our cafeteria. We did a lot of playing around with what seeds work best, which varietals work best. We landed on a kind of flat green star, which works really well in the sandwich bar, and a red roux, which works really well on the salad bar. It holds on to lettuce beautifully. It lasts really long. We do also find that our faculty and staff like to buy bags of the lettuce. So during our primary season, our customers really are students. We do try to integrate our kind of admissions teams, bringing as many people through that space as possible. And then in the summer, we shift our focus to events. Our students aren't on campus and the farms around us are producing beautiful greens. So we like to grow kind of fun and interesting varietals in the farm. So I was a total non-believer, but we grow Thumbelina carrots, we grow radishes. I thought that those things needed soil, but they're actually amazingly delicious. They're adorable. They're like, the size of a silver dollar. We play around with herbs, edible flowers. We do a lot of that to figure out if there's things we can bring in during the summer season. And it's a really great way for us to keep students on campus. Our students like to stay local. They like to be able to take summer classes. So if they have a job opportunity, they can do that more readily. We also try to kind of multitask as often as possible. So oftentimes the students who work in the freight farm are actually working the events where we're serving the greens. And that kind of brings in this programming element. So our goal really is, since we're not really an ag focused school, is to use the food lens in as many places as possible. So whether it's a bridal shower, a wedding, an actual food centered event, we always try to remind people where their food is coming from, why it's important that we can grow it year round. So we tried to gently hammer it home, but we really, we talk ad nauseum about where our food comes from. So those are kind of the two main ways that we use the farm.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Fantastic's my word of the day. If you couldn't tell.
Have a great time.
So it's what David was mentioning is how, in addition to children or students getting actual, skills, they also get it goes beyond just business. They get farming skills. You mentioned you're not an ag skill. Outside of the fact that your school is able to get produce from the farm, how would you say, what are some fringe benefits similar to kind of that you've seen, whether it's additional skill sets for students that complement their curricula or, alternate benefits? What's the impact the farms had on campus from your perspective?
The short answer is it's huge. The kind of more detailed answer, there's probably three major ways that we benefit from it. One is we are moving kind of with this interdisciplinary learning, we're moving towards trying to combine as many majors as possible. We have a program called community-based learning, which kind of brings practical skills into the classroom and vice versa. So for us, one of the really big takeaways is working with our education students to come up with curricula that we could then share with schools that are in maybe food insecure regions of Maine. We have a really great connection with the Penobscot Nation, which is an indigenous tribe in Maine. So hoping in the future, now that COVID has changed some of our plans, to be able to focus a little bit more on helping those communities get year-round growing opportunities to their kind of very rural food insecure areas. That kind of dovetails into another, which is that, since we're not an ag focused school, we end up with students that work in the farm that aren't really sure, they want to do this job, but they also want it to be more than just a job. So we try to find what they like, whether it's their major or not, and build a project around it. So we had a student who's a math major who built us this beautiful, intricate spreadsheet. We have a student who's studying water science, who's helping us do water tests in the farm. We're hoping to work with a local seed company to do hydroponic tests to understand which seeds work best in vertical environments. So really, all of the areas that are maybe not necessarily inherently connected to the freight farm, we try to bring those in. And I know I mentioned 3, but I think I may have smushed all 3 in there. But I guess another big one is just through admissions. So, I think we're all reading in the headlines that students are looking for different things when they go to college. Us being able to say that not only do we grow our food, but we really focus on where those things come from. We're finding that that's really captivating to our future students. We also have about 50% athletes on campus, so looking for nutrient-dense food, which David mentioned earlier. Both Davids actually mentioned earlier. It's a big selling point. I mean, if you're an athlete, you want to make sure you're eating good food, and we can actually show them this is where it was grown. This is why you like your salad so much. We definitely have seen an uptick in salad eating, which is good.
Yeah, it's a little different than the spinach that comes from California, which loses 90% of its vitamin C in the first day from harvest, when you're able to actually consume it at the point of harvest, right? Within a day or two.
Totally.
You're getting a lot more nutrition that way.
Yeah.
Fantastic. The big question, I think you hit on it, in a lot of folks' minds right now, everyone on this call's hit on it. We're all being impacted by COVID. Same question I asked David, kind of for you. How have you guys been impacted, and what do you see, what adjustments have you made to continue with your programming?
Yeah, we've definitely been impacted, as everyone I'm sure on this call has been. For us, our summer is when we do a lot of our kind of revenue generating events, which is where we serve those Thumbelina carrots, radishes, fun things like that. So instead of doing kind of an experimental summer where we grew different products, we just kept with the leafy greens, and we donated 100% to the food bank. We did set aside a couple bags, so if there were any faculty or staff experiencing food insecurity, we were able to give away food to our community internally. Anything else went to the food bank, which I'm very glad we were able to provide that. I know a lot of people needed food, so at least it wasn't wasted, and at least we could keep things going and keep students employed. Another big one though has just been, the beauty of the Freight Farm is how modular it is. So for us, we used to have a lot of people come into the Freight Farm to do lessons or tours or events. Now we're finding that we can actually remove towers, put them in a safe space outside, sanitize them thoroughly, and have engagement that way. So it's allowed us to kind of expand our classroom. We can teach outside, we can get more people interacting with it without the fear of being in a small space. Although, as David mentioned earlier, because of the way that the air circulation works in there, it's actually quite a safe space to be. And otherwise, really kind of focusing on those projects of how can we take this thing that we enjoy so much and feeds our students and help other people in Maine do that. So that's hopeful stuff for the future. I think we've learned a lot in COVID, and we're trying to remain optimistic.
Yeah.
I think it's all good stuff.
I like that. And I like the taking the panels outside, because I think, initially one might think, oh no, then you're introducing pests, but as long as you're doing the spray to sanitize, that actually will address, there won't be any issues. So
yeah,
that's really interesting.
Yeah, typically it's like a tactile experience. So we do some camps with students who have special needs or are trying to learn kind of in more tangible ways. So usually the product that goes outside either gets harvested and eaten on spot, or gets taken away with them. So we just then sanitize the towers themselves and bring them back in.
Perfect. We do have one question that came in through the Q&A, and this will PSA to anyone, please continue to submit those for our end of session Q&A. But for you, have you experimented with different ways of packaging to avoid plastic?
Oh my gosh, that is a great question. Yes and no. The main reason behind the no is we haven't had a real need to sell it. So for the most part, it gets harvested, put in reusable bins, and goes straight to our cafeteria or to the events that it goes to. But one of my main initiatives, much like David's, is to turn it into a business that can generate profit in the seasons that we're not serving it on campus. And that honestly has been one of our biggest barriers, is we want to be able to sell it in a way that also represents the way it was grown. And it's been hard to find compostable packaging. There's actually a mushroom company based in Maine that uses all biodegradable packaging, and we're hoping to partner with them to learn how they do that. We're also playing around with, keeping the root on. How can we make it last as long as possible? So I don't have any advice on that one, but if you have any question asker, please do share it too.
We'll be sharing contact information, so feel free to engage after. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Maya. Gonna pause here for another session, and then we'll bring everyone back for the Q&A. Thank you. So before we jump into the Q&A, wanted to bring our CEO, Rick, back to say a few words about kind of his vision and the vision for Freight Farms as it relates to education at a macro level based on the trends we see in the agriculture space. So Rick, I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks, Alex. And just want to thank Maya, David, and Dave again for sharing their experience. And Maya and David, I really want to thank you both for continuing to show creativity to bring experiential learning and direct value to students. As the parent of 3 children, one of whom's a senior in college and one of whom's a senior in high school, it's actually been slightly heartbreaking to see both of them in their not having that in-person learning. And so still being able to continue to offer some of that direct experiential learning, I think is just so important. So with that, part of what I had mentioned before is my commitment to doing something that's mission driven, and that's really at the heart of what we're about. If you look at 2 of the major crises facing the world right now, they're around land and water availability. When you talk about land, a third of the arable land in the world has disappeared in the last 40 years, and water. Right now, 1.1 billion people have no access to water. 2.7 billion people have face a water shortage at least once a month. And the World Wildlife Federation, their forecast is that up to 2/3 of the world may face water shortages by 2025. And that's due to a combination of natural and man-made issues, part of which are agriculture driven. Agriculture is a huge consumer of soil, but more importantly, it also consumes between 70 and 80% of the world's potable water. So our approach and vertical farming at large is really meant to address that, try and get away from a reliance on soil, get away from a reliance on water, and also be able to deal with food security, which has become a much bigger issue with COVID and people wanting to understand where their food comes from, what it might have passed through, et cetera. So with all of that, we're becoming a more important part of agriculture going forward. Forecasts have vertical farming growing from 2.5 billion today to 12 billion by 2026. So for agricultural institutions, it's a no-brainer. If you're going to be talking about the future of agriculture, vertical farming definitely plays a role. When it comes to the most flexible modular form factor, container farming, that's the niche we fill. So that's a big part of the reason why we're on those over 40 campuses. It's a combination of a demonstrated commitment to sustainability, a curriculum ad for agricultural institutions, a student enrichment and engagement activity, and of course, most directly, just a great source of hyper fresh with all of its nutrients, as Alex pointed out with the vitamin C example, produce. So education is the second biggest market we have. Despite the issues with COVID, we've continued to sell into institutions and continue to focus on it because it's not only a big market for us, but we think it's super important because, again, we think this is important for the world. And as an entry point, working with educators to introduce this to students so they can start thinking about not only vertical farming, but a lot of those broader issues we address is very important. So I'm really excited to see all the people here that are continuing to be engaged. And I would say, again, not only despite COVID, but because of COVID, because I think, this crisis really has put a spotlight, I think, for a lot of people on the need to be proactive about thinking about other crises that the world is facing. And again, very high on that list is water and land availability and scarcity. So I'd invite you all to either directly participate or tell your friends, because again, we would like to spread at a minimum that broader message about doing the right thing for the planet. And also, again, back to Maya and David, creating these engagement opportunities where it's possible so people can have some semblance of a reasonable experience as they progress through these strange times in education. So back to you, Alex.
Thank you, Rick. And I'll invite everyone else to turn on their videos and come back in, and we'll kick off the Q&A. We just got one in, and we'll do this freeform style. So if you have an answer, just go for it. How easy is it to set the farms to sustainably run on solar? That's a question that just came in. And I believe Maya and David, you guys do not run on solar. So Dave, this might be for you.
Sure. So the farm, the greenery uses quite a bit of power. So it is absolutely possible to run off of solar alone. We do have one farmer in Tennessee who is doing that. She has very large Tesla batteries that have to be charged in order to power the farm when there isn't direct sunlight. So during the nighttime, there's a significant number of panels required because of the amount of power that's used. And it's not, I think most people ask the question, if I put solar panels on top of the farm, would that be enough to power it throughout the entire day? And the answer to that is no. However, depending on the size of the solar panels and the efficiency, the footprint that you would need could be somewhere between 4 to 8 times the size of the top of the container in order to fully power your farm. And that also depends on what your power usage is, whether you want to run your lights for 18 hours a day or 12 hours a day, what climate you're in, and how often your AC is going to run. There are a lot of factors there. I'm more than happy, along with my team, to answer that and give you kind of a customized answer to that question specific to your area if you're interested.
Perfect. Next question. Do any of you, and this is probably for you, David and Maya, do either of you need emergency or backup power?
Well, so for us, go ahead, Maya.
No, go ahead.
So for us, our schools generally are on a extremely high priority for any restoration of power. I think that's probably pretty universal. Obviously, if you're rural, it may be a little bit more difficult, but so they really, like XL Energy is ours. They come very, very quickly. Our school does have a backup generator, but when that's happened, there are a ton of different settings that you can do to minimize the impact to your plants that you can go. The longest I've gone without power is relatively short, but I have gone without a couple pieces of equipment for as much as 18 hours. And if I know that's happening, I can turn off, turn on, leave some stuff alone, and it can kind of bridge the gap. And we're fortunate that we've had nothing like that. But yeah, there's a lot of, and that's another great, it happened with the kids around. We had to figure out, well, what are we gonna do with the exhaust fans now that, getting our AC fixed or whatever the situation is. Again, another natural problem solving opportunity. So yeah, lots of things you can do. You can bridge quite a bit of time without power. You get much more than 24 hours. My experience is you're probably gonna start seeing some diminishing quality and have to restore some things, but.
Maya, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Similar answer. We have a generator. We did experience a storm about 2 years ago that knocked the whole college out of power for 4 days, I think it was. So we did have a generator that we were able to cycle on and off to similarly achieve the same thing David's talking about, where we didn't have it running the whole time, but we were able to get through it.
And really and for those of you in the audience, the pumps are the key piece, right? The water, the hydroponics, more so than the actual light panels. The plants can go a pretty extended period without those, but without water, they'll croak quickly. Now that question, we got a question in, which crops have you tried to grow but failed?
We tried lavender, which did not work great. We had some in the ground that didn't do well, and we were like, well, let's see what happens in a tower. So that, I mean, it's just not the right environment for lavender. I think that was our biggest failure. What about you, David?
Yeah, we did a lot of crop experimentation, especially the first couple of semesters, probably 60 plus different types of seeds. Because we're running ours as a for-profit business, we really had to evaluate the vertical space available for the crop we were doing. We found some crops that would grow, but the quantity of product that we would get out of a foot of space was not in a balance with our objective of selling product for profit. So we have found spinach to be challenging for us to get the volume. We can grow it, but the volume for a for-profit business did not work for us. But everything works. It's whether it works together with the other crops that you want to grow. That's the question. I know some farmers grow like they have like a basil container. Well, basil will be super happy, warmer than I keep it for lettuce. So we're always trying to find that spot where we find happiness for all the different varieties we want. Because we have about 8 herbs we grow regularly and about 4 to 6 types of lettuce. So we're finding that spot where they all kind of fit. But it's fun. Crop experimentation is great. You have to wait 2 months to get the end result, but that's also, good for the kids to kind of figure out.
And shorter than the ground.
Yeah. So got another question in here, and this will probably be our last question before we wrap up. Have you had to overcome any insect problems? And if so, kind of what did that process look like?
David, I know you mentioned this a little bit earlier that you had a pest.
Yeah. So I put up strips on the ceiling. I actually have the original strips here now. We have not had a problem to speak of. The strips are not to trap and keep them from multiplying or whatever. It's to trap them and know what you're up against. And the only thing that we have had occasionally is fungus gnats, and they are not harmful to produce. They're irritating and you don't want them around. But we figured out where they were finding a spot in the farm that allowed them to have a little happy home. And so we got rid of that happy home for them. And we have been really fungus gnat free now for over 2 years. The pathogens I mentioned earlier, powdery mildew and gray mold are 2 that we have worked with. And David Harris has helped me a lot with both of those in the past, plus other farmers. We had one semester where that was a real focus of the kids. We really looked at the chemistry and also recognized another thing when you're doing real life work and you have to solve real life problems. We lost sight in that semester. We lost sight of the concept of an ecosystem in the towers. So we stopped all our beneficial bacteria addition, and it actually made our problem worse. So we went back to thinking of the towers as an ecosystem, the kids and I, and realized, hey, we dropped that out when we were trying to keep everything super, super clean, and really adding that back in, that beneficial bacteria, helped with the gray mold problem. So it's little things like that. Learning curve is great, but involving the kids and asking the kids to kind of research that is kind of how we went about it. So we do not spray anything. I'm assuming Maya doesn't as well on the plants themselves. The closest we've gotten to anything sprayed on there is we have a 0.5% citric acid solution that does help kind of knock down if we see the start of some mold on the top of a seedling plug or something like that. And that seems to be really, really effective for us. So we were very clean. I don't wash any of the lettuce that comes out of here for myself, nor is it necessary. It's so clean and so pure that, anyway, nothing has touched it. As you can see, I was working and listening to what was going on. Nothing touches the product all the way from seed to harvest. So
I like to say it's side free. There's nothing, no herbicide, none of that. Well, thank you. Very knowledgeable. To close us out, really wanted to, we have a lot of folks in the audience who are looking at this as, is this something I can bring to my school? Kind of shows in the questions being asked. And we've seen a ton of interest in this company-wide. If you were talking to a prospective school, what advice would you give? What would you give them? And I'll really point this to you, Maya and David, but Rick and Dave, if you have any additional thoughts, please feel free to chime in.
I think the advice that I would give is be in the farm as much as you can yourself. I've seen that change in this last semester. I haven't been able to spend as much time in there, and I feel very disconnected. And being in there really helps make sure, if your goal is student engagement, that your students are getting the most out of it and not just, wearing headphones and doing work, which is also very valuable. And I think, the thing that makes me the most excited is the integrations. So as many classes, as many subjects as you can make a part of the Freight Farm, I think it really helps people understand that no matter, we're in a college setting, so we're very career focused. No matter what your career path is, if you're passionate about plants, you can figure out a way to apply your career path towards that. So helping our students discover that's been really fun.
Mm-hmm. I would say for me, I should have the exact number, but probably close to 250 kids that have taken my course over the last 3 years. I've only had a couple that have pursued horticulture. CSU here in Colorado has a great horticulture program. But the transferability that Maya mentions, the idea that you're going to learn some skills that you can use elsewhere, is constantly something I try to remind the kids about. Most of them aren't going to be farmers, but a whole bunch of them are going to be running a business, involved in a business, customer service, processing and handling cash and credit cards, all the skills that we practice all the time. And so it's just rich and ripe with opportunity for that. And again, I'll put up my gloved hands this time. Each thing that you could do, make it fit your school and make it work. I'm not going to try to be like Maya, nor is Maya going to try to be like me. This is what fits. And I think that's when you find a curriculum, I'll put that in quotes, or a tool, like the farm is a tool for me. You can adapt and learn so much and go so far in different areas that meet your needs specifically. And I think, so that's more than just the farming, that's philosophically in education. I believe that's important. So it's rich and ripe for that type of thing.
Thank you. Perfect. Well, with that, want to thank everyone who participated in today's event. So all 4 of you, for those of you in the audience, we hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions after this event, please feel free to reach out to us. If you're already talking with someone at Freight Farms, engage them. If not, you can shoot us an email on our webpage. As a friendly reminder, you will be receiving a recording of this tomorrow with some additional resources. And then lastly, this is Farm to School Month. So today was our second event. Next week on October 27th, we'll actually be having our last event. It'll be a full-on classroom. So David and Maya, you might even want to check that out. We have our own farm manager actually running a class in the farm as an example, so folks can see what it truly looks like. So again, thank you, everyone. We hope you enjoyed and have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.